Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Nexus Insights, the podcast we are focused on having authentic conversations with interesting people. I'm Robert Montez. I have my co-host, Miss Josie Allred. She's here with us as well.
Hi guys.
And today we have a great podcast planned. And I guess I should back up. We had a great podcast planned, an awesome guest coming in, but life does get in the way. But we were set up, we were all ready to record, and Josie and I figured, hey, this would be an awesome time to just sit down, to talk, to go through some of the things that have been happening in the world and just kind of do a recap. I mean, we haven't really recapped anything as far as the market since the end of 2025 and just kind of where we're kicking off into 2026. And so we thought this would be a great time to do that and kind of get you guys caught up on what's going on with some of the current events. And really where I wanted to kick it off is I think this last year is a great opportunity to talk about one of the age-old questions with investing, which is what is better, passive or active management? And I think that 2025 was a perfect year for active managers to really shine. And so that's where I wanted to kick off and just kind of go through that and also hop into other things that are happening just with expansion, what we're doing with business, and kind of go from there. So where should we start? I mean, as far as that, Josie, I mean, I don't want to just talk, and otherwise I'll take over and just be a talking head the whole time.
No,
but
that's fine.
I know that with the way things are, I mean, we obviously have very different roles in the business right now. I mean, you being a new advisor, and you're kind of at not necessarily entry stage. I say you're somewhat past that just because you have sat in on so many appointments and you've seen a lot and you've learned a lot. But just, I'm 17 plus years into this. You're about a year into this. And so we are kind of have a different focus. And so, you're going to have a different perspective. Sometimes I feel like I'm so in the weeds doing, market research, doing, the different things that I do every week for just the market reports, the economic outlooks. And that's not really your role right now. So while you're informed, it's not something where you're as in the weeds, I think. And so, I don't know if when you're sitting there, maybe the conversations you're having are things that you're hearing from people that you're thinking, hey, these are questions I am hearing, because sometimes I feel like I'm not insulated from that, but maybe not as on the ground floor, So I don't know. Is there anything that you think would be
like questions that people who have come in during those meetings have asked?
Yeah, or just even things that you're seeing from your perspective. I mean, we're also in very different spots in life. I'm almost 40 years old. I'm married. I've got a family. I'm we're very well established, and you being a 23-year-old young woman, like you're kind of at the beginning stages, and so we talk about this too. Is that like the way that I think your generation looks at the world versus the way my generation looks, it's very, very different. Like I look at my generation, I remember growing up pre-internet. Like I was there. Like I was in the 1900s, the memes that people do. And so I remember not a time where we didn't have nearly the amount of access to information that is present today. And I think that it's different in the way that my generation kind of views the world, because a lot of people of my generation, it wasn't as impossible to buy a house. It wasn't as impossible to get ahead financially. I think it was almost easier to kind of go the traditional route of, meeting a spouse and doing all those things. Whereas nowadays everyone's doom scrolling, everything's so quick and everything's not quite the same. And so maybe we just kind of start there from a perspective question or just...
It's so funny that like that's what was brought up this morning, but I was watching a video this morning, like as I was like trying to get out of bed, like getting breakfast together, and it was basically this guy talking about like everything that's going on in the world and how everyone wants you to be concerned about everything all the time.
That's so true.
It's starting to make people not appreciate their own lives, or it's like we're living in one of the best times to be alive right now.
100%.
Like there's so much going on, but at the same time the access that we have to the internet and to like social networks, where it's so hard for us to have empathy for things that are going on in other countries. I know that you've dealt with that too, with like coming from the Ranger Regiment and being a part of the Army. It's like we're so insulated from a lot of the things that are happening in the other world, but we also don't have like the mental capacity or the emotional capacity to care about everything all the time. But then it's starting to make us feel bad for not caring all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And it's starting this cycle to where people are constantly sad and depressed because they're seeing everything that's going on in the world and they're forgetting that they don't actually live in that reality.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, is that like even with I've noticed, and again, I really don't want this podcast to ever like get political. That's not my goal. God bless America. Believe what you want to believe. However, I've also noticed that, since Charlie Kirk was killed, just how the algorithms, I feel like there's almost like this power vacuum for that side of the conversation where people have been like, it's almost like I've never seen my algorithm be so angry. And I've really kind of checked out. Like I have like checked out from a lot of social media and just what people are talking about, anything political, because of exactly what you're saying, is that people want so, it's like they're trying to capture your attention, and there's so many things trying to capture our attention that it's like the amplitude gets magnified. And it's like this over the top. You should be, if you, and again, I haven't even seen this, but my wife brought it up where she was talking about like, things that have been going on and with all the protests or whatever you want to call those. Let's say protests. We'll keep it neutral. But she basically is like, yeah, you're seeing people like, hey, if you're remaining silent on this, then you don't care about this, you don't care about that. And I'm like, man, I've got a family. I've got things that I'm trying to take care of for myself, and we're trying to do things that are just like to make our community, our family a better place. And I have this conversation probably twice a month with people who, they call me up and say, Robert, should I even be investing?
Yeah.
Is it worth it?
Well, and can I, like, right before you go into that, and that's, like, I think that people are getting decision paralysis. Like, and you talk about that so much, too, where it's, like, it's almost like there's so many different things to do. Like, should I, like, that there are people that are so scared that they're trying to take the safe route, and it ends up hurting them more in the long run. And as well as like all the bad things that are happening, I know that you've talked about this a little bit, is all of the advertisements that we see on a day-to-day basis. Every single thing that we look at has an advertisement, or has a brand or has a name, that we just started to tune it out. And I think that that's started to happen with a lot of the things that are happening in the world, and that includes like when people are like, oh, save for your future else you're going to be doomed, then it's like that's also something that they tune out as well, because it's just another one of those things where it's scary, it's way in the future, and it doesn't direct your day-to-day life.
And we're seeing it on a global level, and I'll go into that story there, but just to kind of piggyback off what you're saying, is on a global level, you're seeing countries like Japan and like China where they're having this massive birth crisis because they're just not having children, because for so long it was pushed like, oh, we don't need to have multiple kids, and and then I think that they have that kind of approach with their country. But I think here in the United States, we see it where people are like, I just want to stay single. I don't want to have a family. I don't want to do that because I don't even know if it's worth it. And you kind of get, again, that doom scrolling type mentality where people are like scared to bring children into the world. And going back to the conversation we were talking about, is that with this young lady, is that she was trying to figure out, like, what do I even do? Is it worth it to keep down this path of investing for my future? Should I be buying gold? Should I be buying silver? And so one of the things that I do, and this is a very common question, I've had clients before who have called me, and like, I'll never forget, I had a client who called me a couple of years ago during the COVID era, and she was ready to pull out her entire life savings and buy gold. And so we had to have that conversation of like, hey, and I always look at it as never my job to talk people in or out of something. My job is to listen, to hear what they want to do, and to really figure out where they're coming from so I can make recommendations that will help them best accomplish those goals. And so when I was talking to this client, I asked her, why do you want to do this? And she basically was like, I think I need something stable. The world is just so crazy. I think it's only going to get worse. And so I'm kind of combining two different stories now, but what that ended up looking like is I always bring people back is like, okay, whoever is marketing gold and silver, they have done a phenomenal job of making it out to be something it's not. If you were to go, and if people, and I would encourage people to do this, if they are looking at gold as an asset, yes, historically it has done well, but so has everything. Like I could say historically the S&P's crushed, like I can do any of that stuff. And if you look at gold, there's a period of time, if you look at the price of gold, where you bought gold in the early 80s, I think around between 1980 to 82, gold peaked and it was selling at sky high record prices. And what a lot of people don't realize is that period of time was we were coming out of a situation that was very similar to what it was just a few years ago, when we had record high inflation, gas prices at all-time highs. Like it was a really crazy time. And so what we've seen is when the market gets choppy, people move towards what they think of as stable assets like gold or silver. But the problem with that is that when people were buying, if you would have bought gold in that 2-year period of time, and I might have my dates wrong, go ahead and check, but it was around the early 80s, I think around 82, you would have had to hold on to that gold for over 20 years before you ever could have sold it for a profit. it. And so the question I ask people when they're looking at buying gold is like, hey, could you afford for this to not only not make you anybody, but to be at a loss for the next 20 years? And then the follow-up question with that is that, how do you feel about knowing that when you do this, a lot of these places that sell precious metals, they have a huge markup. It's typically no less than 7%. I've seen as high as 18% of a markup. So you're starting 7 to 18% behind the curve. So now you have to make that up just to break even. And then the last thing I'll throw at people is like, okay, well, now you want to buy this, especially if you're going to put it into an IRA. People don't realize you can't just hold that gold at your house. You have to actually use a custodian they're typically on coastal states, but you don't have your gold.
Yeah, and then at that point, what's the difference between just buying into a gold fund?
And that's kind of where I get to people is like, okay, so you don't even have the gold. So if the world ever did get to like, death and destruction, doom and gloom, like your gold is states hundreds, if not thousands of miles away. So it kind of defeats the purpose. And that was kind of what I was talking with this young lady about is that, hey, that's probably not the right answer. And the thought process that like, is this going to work out? I kind of remind people is like, I don't think it's really as bad as we make it out to be. I think that it's just amplified, and I think that that's kind of the issue. And that kind of goes on the subject we were going to talk about with like active versus passive management. This is another age-old question, and what's better? And the answer I will say to people a lot is it depends. It really depends on what's happening with the market. But now what I think we're going to start seeing, and I might be wrong, this could easily prove wrong, but we saw it last year, is that because there has never been so much information available, so readily available, that like I think active managers are going to start really shining. So like the manager that we use, SEI Private Trust Company, last year, their all equity strategy, which is a globally diversified portfolio. This is not a recommendation, by the way. I'm using this as an example. But they finished the year up right at 24%. And you compare that to the S&P 500, just finished up, I believe it was 17.9%. Mm-hmm. And so you start having these conversations with people is like, hey, because the market is so choppy and there's so much volatility, it's actually the volatility gives managers the ability to really take advantage of that because the market is not rational. Yeah. People make really stupid choices all the time, and that creates opportunities. And so I think now with AI and with the access of information we have with the leveraging power of what can be done with AI, it's to me, it's kind of an insane time where I think active managers are only going to get better and only going to be able to make that spread bigger. I'm not saying passive has no spot in investing. I just think that when it comes to my life savings, with all the volatility, with everything that's happening, like I want a team of professionals paying attention every day and trading on my behalf. So, that's just me kind of talking for 10 minutes straight.
No, I agree. But I just think with all the information, like we have so much information, mm-hmm. and it's changing every single day, and things are just being thrown in our face every single day. Yeah,
and I think for you, like, I can imagine, like I think of like you just starting where you're at and having access to AI the way that it exists. Like you look at Grok, for example, and for anyone who's not using AI, you really should consider it and go in and look at the capabilities. I mean, the last capabilities talk that I saw that Elon and his team of professionals were doing on Grok, and I don't know about all the other ones. I use Grok, and so that's the one I pay attention to. But to essentially have a PhD level expert in your pocket on your phone or at your computer screen that you can ask questions and you can bounce ideas off of, and it like the market reports that we can do now, like these used to take 20 plus hours. Like I would be able to do one per month because it was so labor intensive and reading every report. And now to have essentially a team of professionals, through Grok, where it can go out and I can kind of drive that train and be like, hey, this is what I need. I know what I need and I know the sources. I need you to look here, scrub this information, give me this, and this, and then I'll assemble it correctly. For someone like you getting started in this industry, I can just only imagine, because what took me, 10 plus years to do, I genuinely believe like, hey, you'll be able to do it in 3 to 5, so it's just an exciting time. So
it's an exciting time, but it's like kind of scary too.
What are you most scared of?
Well, I think that like it just goes back to like the conversations that I've heard the most of is people are scared of AI. It's gonna like take over their jobs.
Yeah, it could.
And yeah, it could.
I mean, it could, 100%.
I know. It's just like, oh, well, yeah.
Well, I mean, look at people would say the same thing about every technology that's ever been invented, though.
Yeah, it's so true. But even, like, with buying a house or building a house or having, like, even the option to do that, I guess I am curious, though, what you would say to younger people who just just want to buy a house?
Yeah, that's it's a tough question for people because it depends on so many factors that can feel like they're out of your control, you know? And so different markets are going to be different. Obviously, if you live in a market like Missoula, where we're at, it's very challenging because I remember my wife and I, the first house we bought, we got lucky. We closed on it the first week of March 2020.
Yeah.
Right before COVID kicked off. So it was perfect timing. But we bought that house at $280,000. And I remember even then thinking like, oh my gosh, it seems like so much money. And then COVID happened, and so many people, with a huge influx of people into Montana, specifically into Missoula, housing prices went through the roof. And that same house, when we sold it beginning of 2025, we sold it low because we were trying to move it so we could buy our new house. But we sold it for like $540,000. And if we were a little bit more patient and were willing to sit on it, we probably could have sold it for $550,000, $555,000.
That's so crazy.
It is crazy. And so I think for younger people, you really have to focus on the things you can control. Mm-hmm. What can you control? You can control your credit. Why? Because it's very simple. There's 5 things that make that up, and the majority of them are paying your bills on time and not having a credit utilization above 30% on your credit card. So just being in a spot where you are not overextending yourself.
If you were to recommend a specific credit card or the best way to build your credit, what would you recommend?
So the best way, I think for individuals as they're younger, I would say for adults who are watching this who have younger kids, I would say put them as an authorized user on your credit card. So I do that for my daughter. My daughter, she's been an authorized user on my credit card since she was 13. I don't know exactly how much. I've seen conflicting things, but it does give her at least some credit history.
Right.
The next thing I would say is that, I know there are some professionals, and I'm not taking away, I never want to, take anything away from Dave Ramsey because he does so much that I think is very helpful for the average Main Street investor. But there are things he says that I think are kind of detrimental, and I get it because he has a radio show, he has to get listeners, he has to sell his books. God bless America. But I think when he talks about not using credit at all, that's bad advice in my opinion, because you're going to need credit. You're going to need credit when you want to buy a car. You're going to need credit when you want to buy a house. And so even if you're a younger person, I would say going out and getting some type of credit card, or there's not a specific one. I would say go to your local bank, your local credit union, and just tell them. And you can get a secured credit card where you put money down so that like, hey, I have this money, it's already paid for. That way you don't get yourself into trouble. What I would say is that if you're going to use it, there's this misconception that you have to use your credit card for it to help build your credit. You don't. You just need to have it. And what I would say is if I was a younger person, whether I was like, early 20s or whatever that may be, if they don't have a credit card, I'd say go to your local bank, talk to them, get one, but understand it's a potential trap. So just don't use it. Don't even carry it in your wallet. Just throw it in your drawer or something, because having it would help. As far as like what you can then do, I think a lot of it is budgeting. I think a lot of people, like if we've talked about this before, is that there was a period of time where like your parents, my parents, and like even me earlier on in my life, where something that I was taught how to do and was put an emphasis on in school was how to balance your checkbook. Mm-hmm. Well, there was a time where we would have to, every couple of weeks, people would sit down, take 15, 20 minutes, they would balance their checkbook, and then they would know where their finances were at. And so there's not really any equivalent of that in today's day and age. We have apps, we have all these different things we can use, but people don't really utilize them very well. And so I think people, when it comes to their money, they constantly feel like they're in this like reactionary mode. And if you just think common sense, if you take any job and I said, hey, you don't have any control, you're just going to react to whatever comes at you, it's stressful. And this is where you see a lot of people at. And so I would say, like, if I were a younger person and I was getting things started, I would look at an app like Monarch. Monarch Money is what we typically use. It's phenomenal. It gives you
doing a lot with that too.
Yeah, we're really incorporated. They've been a great partner, and just incorporating it with the way that we approach financial planning. And again, going back to AI. What Monarch allows people to do is it allows them to take every account they have. All right. So the issue that I see with financial planning as a whole is that I think that most financial institutions are more focused on selling products than they are on providing a total solution. Mm-hmm. And so what we see, and you've heard me say this a million times, is people, when we look at their finances, and you've seen it hundreds of times, they'll have investments over here, insurance over here, they're doing this with their debt, this with their real estate goals, this with their 401k. They've got all these random financial products. but no one's ever actually sat down with them and showed them how to build it into one comprehensive plan that gets everything working. So that's what our firm tries to do for people, is help them build out that plan that looks at every aspect of their finances. But the problem with that is that historically we could build a financial plan, but it was a snapshot in time. This is where you're at right now, today. This is what we need to do. And think of it like a plane, where if no one's making corrections, it's just like life happens and people start to drift. And so having a tool that allows you to link everything and then set very clear goals and see where you're doing, get ongoing updates, that's what Monarch does. It allows you to bring everything together and then basically, keep an easy budget. See your cash flow. There's an AI feature integrated into it so that you can actually ask the AI. So like maybe you're like, I don't even know where to start. You could go in, update all your accounts, put it into one spot, and then just ask the AI, here's my financial picture. Like, what could I do to cut back? What are my discretionary spending items that I could cut back on? You could start having those types of conversations and really start figuring things out. And kind of going back to your original question on buying a house, I think that would be a great start. I just met with a young lady here recently, and again, she's not making a lot of money. She's only making probably about maybe take home $2,500 a month, but she's saving probably $700 of that. Wow. Because she lives like a pauper and she understands delayed gratification. And I think that is something that is so, we're just lacking in our world today, because everything's instantaneous. I can pull up my phone and I can watch anything I want to watch, get answers to anything I want to get answers to. So it's a great tool, but it's a double-edged sword. Yeah. It also means that a lot of people don't know how to think. And so other things.
I think a lot of people too, it's like delayed for what? A house that they'll like, I saw something that's like, oh, even if you save a coffee every day for a year, you still don't have enough to put a down payment on a house to go enjoy your coffee.
Yeah.
And like I understand both sides of that situation, but and that's where like the fear mongering comes in, because it's like, oh yeah, I could delay gratification, but delay it for what?
Yeah. Well, I think that comes back to having very clear goals. Yeah. And I think that comes back to, it's more about, what do you want your life to look like? Money is just, it's just currency, like in that you can use it to buy, like obviously it's currency, but I mean like it's time currency. It gives you the ability to make choices where no one can put their thumb on you, but it's not the end all be all. And I think that is another part of the problem, is that I'm going to give you an example that's true for me. I remember when I first started working in the financial world, I was working around people who were making more money than I thought was, I had never been around people who made the kind of money that these guys were making. I'm talking about guys, this was back in 2005-ish, who were making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy to me. And I saw the cars they were driving. Went to the houses they lived in, and I was like, whatever these guys are doing, I want to do it. And I saw that this was an industry that you could do that type of stuff and do it in a way that you could help people. Yeah. But I had this thought process when I was making no money, that as soon as, like, I wanted to retire as quickly as possible. And I thought that was where happiness was. And so, it took me a while to get this going. I made basically no money for the first 5 years doing this. And then year 6, I made a little bit, but then I was just so burnt out. I got my start. I started talking to people about investing. I got my securities license in 2009, so the year after the market crashed in 2008. So long story short, I was so burnt out 6 years into this that I was like, I'm going to do something different. And that's, I'd always want to go in the Army, and that's what led to that. And so I did my time in the Army. When I came back, I was like, still kind of in that mentality, is like, I'm going to make all this money so I could stop working. Mm-hmm. And I told myself, like, I don't even need to make a lot. I want to get to the point where I'm making $100,000 a year residually. If I do that, I'm going to just semi-retire. And I did that. And I hit that goal also in 2020. All right. So right as COVID was happening, I got to the point where I was making $100,000 a year residually just to take care of the book of business I had. And in our industry, as you know, once you get there, it's easy to maintain. Like, you could work maybe 10 to 15 hours a week and keep your current clients. And so I did that for about 9 months, and I just kind of semi-retired. And I was like, this is going to be great. I'm telling you, it was so boring. I got bored so quick, and I couldn't wait to go back to work. And around that time, I was talking to a client of mine. It's funny, he was just in the office yesterday, but a gentleman named Mark. And Mark and I were talking about just money, and Mark's older than me, and that's the other thing, is that for a long time in my career, I was talking to people who were a lot older than me, who had a lot more money than I did. Mm-hmm. And so he and I started talking about like how he didn't need to be working, but he still chose to. And I started thinking about that and seeing a lot of my clients, that was their situation, is that they didn't really need to be working, but they chose to. And it can be this epiphany of like, it's not so much about getting to the end state, it's about like building something like that you love doing. And I think it's Naval Ravikant, he said something, I'm going to butcher the quote, but essentially it's like, when you can, what other people feel as work, when you can find a way that this, like, find that thing that's play to you but work to others, you're going to crush it. You know, he says something to that tune, and that's kind of what I decided. I was like, I'm going to make this something that is just fun. I'm going to play at this. I'm going to make it a game. It's going to be a measure of who I can be. And going back again, the weave, as President Trump likes to call it. How do you buy a house? I think you have to first figure out, like, what do I want my life to look like? How am I going to make money? Because it's very, very simple. My 7-year-old son, I'm so proud of that little dude. He goes door to door and sells candy canes. He did it yesterday. And he came back in and he made $8, and he makes little perler bead sets. Like, I don't know if you know what those are, but they're like the little things, like you can make bead designs, then you iron them, and then so those are perler beads. So he'll ask his little friends like who their favorite football team is, and so he'll be like, I'll make you their logo for $5. And so like he's making one right now for Vikings, and from one of his friends. And so he's just finding ways to hustle. And I think
I also remember you telling me that he came in and he's like, oh, hey, Dad. And he had like stacks and stacks of coins and everything. And he's like, can you please take this to bank and turn it into cash? And then he was like, you're like, oh, what do you want to spend it on? And he was, I don't know. It was retirement.
No, he said save it for college.
Save it for college. I was like, it was something really far in the future.
And again, that's not me, because like, again, I'm not, God bless America. You want to go to college, go to college. I think that for a lot of people, college is unnecessary. That is my opinion. If you need to go to college for what you want to do, or you know exactly, then go. But otherwise, I think it's a waste of money. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it.
I just think it's kind of sad.
Yeah. So my 7-year-old did not hear go to college for me. I'm not encouraging that. All right. I'm like, hey dude, figure it out. Join the army. You'll go for free. I think that's, my daughter's talking about. So,
oh wow.
But, I think that, again, going back to like, how do you buy a house? You have to make money. Like, that's the answer that no one wants to hear. In today's economy, you need to either move somewhere where it's less expensive, or you need to find a way to make more money. Well, people hear that and they immediately go, oh, humdrum, I want to quit now. Making money is so simple. I'm not saying it's easy. It's very simple. And there's, again, a great book to start with. Whatever you decide, I just re-listened to this. I just finished it this morning again, is Excellence Wins by Hort Schulze. He's COO and president of Ritz-Carlton. Phenomenal book. And the main idea with this theme is no matter what you do, there is always room at the top. Whatever you want to do, if you're going to be great at it, you can make so much money. And with the way the world works, with the internet, with AI, with the ability to leverage your time, it's so simple if you just dedicate consistent time to doing those things. And what I would say to young people, if you're trying to do all that, is 1, figure out what is going to be your thing. 2, you need to take your first hour of every day. You need to work on that big project, no matter what it is. And so I do this 6 days a week. I don't do it on Saturday. I give myself a day off. But I have big projects, and my big project, I know when I finish this project, it's going to grow my income by about $550,000 a year. And I think I can finish it probably in the next year. That's my goal, is by the end of this year, I want to be in that position. And so it just puts you in a spot where it's like, man, it's not a lot. It's just systematic daily improvements, and that compounding effect of just relentlessly focusing on this one thing and being great at it. And how can I refine this? How can I make this better? And so I would say start there. And you can have a traditional job while you're doing this. I'm not saying quit your job and go crazy. No, just wake up a little earlier. All right. Start prioritizing your health, start prioritizing, yourself, because again, and why I say that first hour, don't say, oh, I'm going to get to it later in the day. No, you won't. That's a lie. It's a myth. You have to do the big project first, because all the day-to-day stuff, wherever you're at in life, guys, whether you're young, whether you're old, the day-to-day stuff never goes away. It will never stop. It will always be there. And so if you don't prioritize that time for yourself, the first thing, the rest of your day will consume it. But what I've also noticed is that when I do that and I'm doing it consistently, I feel great. I wake up excited. I wake up every morning, typically no later than 5:30. A lot of times, like 5:15, somewhere in there. So not super early, but early enough. And I'm pumped. I'm tired still, but I'm like, this is going to change my life. This is going to change my family's life. This is going to change my son's life, my daughter's life, my wife's life. We're going to we're going to have, like, I'm just like, man, it's going to be incredible. And I remind myself, like, I might die here soon. So like, I need to do everything I can to set my family up the best possible way, because like, it doesn't last forever. And that's what makes life so, so special. And I mean, I'm just, things have been happening a lot. Like my son, he makes me so proud sometimes with the thing. Not sometimes, I'm very proud of him, and my daughter as well. But we were talking just 2 days ago, and we have our dog Kobe, and Kobe he's a boxer mixed with a golden retriever.
Okay.
He is the most loving, kind. He like jumps and gives you the biggest pupper hugs. Like, he's the best. And my son, he goes, Kobe's like my little brother, and I don't know why. There's just something in me where I feel like I need to prep him to be like a little bit of like a hard person, like a hard man, because like life is hard, you know. And I think being soft all the time, like, you need to be able to deal with hard shit. And so I told him, I was like, he's like your little brother. He's a great dog. I was like, you realize though, he's only going to live for maybe another 5 years.
So hard.
All right. I looked at him and said, you realize he's going to die in about 5 years, because
Mm-hmm.
Kobe's like 6 years old, right? I was like, he's maybe got 5 or 6 years. I was like, so around the time you get to be in middle school or like, you know, in high school, he's going to die. And he's like, I know, Dad. He goes, and he looks at me, and I didn't prompt him. He goes, but I'd rather have what I have with him, knowing he's going to die, than never have had him at all. I swear to you, he didn't say it as polished as that, but that's what he said to me. And I was like, that's exactly right, son. And I was like, that's exactly the right way. That's how I look at my relationship with you, with your mom. We might die, but I'm so glad that I've had you, because the alternative is, hey, we never had any of this. And so like, I think that's just those types of things. Like I think of my life, like for me, the big driving thing is I want so bad for my kids to have a head start. And I think that life is very hard. And again, love him or hate him, I don't really care. But you look at President Trump, and I think he'd be successful regardless of where he grew up or who his parents were. But I don't think he'd be the man he is without his dad. And no one ever talks about that, is that his dad came from nothing. His dad, I believe, was like a normal day laborer. And then he started building houses, and he started getting into real estate. And by all means, he was successful. Like, if you looked at him in normal life today, you'd be like, that was a successful man. But he wasn't making like FU money. He wasn't so rich that like, oh, he wasn't like that. But he was successful, and he taught these lessons to his kids. And again, it still is on the individual, because as you look at President Trump's family, he had a brother who died from being an alcoholic. I might be getting that wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. He had some type of substance abuse.
But do you think people blame their parents either for better or for worse?
Yeah, but it's a perfect case study, is that here's someone, so you have one brother that ends up having a substance abuse issue and ends up dying. And you have someone else who, again, love him or hate him, became the leader of the free world. And that only happens, I think, because of his parents. And so that's another focus for me, is like, this morning, my son woke up. He just comes in. I'm working away. It's like 6:20. Usually I wake him up at 6:50. And he comes into my office, and he sees me working. He's like, hey, Dad. I'm like, hey, buddy, you got 30 minutes. You can go back to bed. He's like, no, I wanted to wake up early so I can finish my Perlid beads so I can sell it today. I was like, all right, bro, go get it. And so, but like, again, like, I didn't tell him to do that, but I think he sees myself and he sees my wife, where we wake up, we work hard, we're after it, but then we still go out, we spend money, we have fun. And so all that saying is that if I were a young person and I was trying to figure out how to do this, I would say stop striving for the minimum. Don't think you're going to do it by getting a normal job. You're probably not right now. You need to find a way to make more money, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be a traditional way of doing it, but I would find a way to work for myself somehow, some way, because then you can control your finances. You can supplement a normal job by making extra income. You're probably going to have to work like I was going to say something that's not politically correct. You're going to work your ass off, all right? You're going to have to do those things for a time. If you go the traditional route, it's really hard. I mean, unless you get a job where you're making some serious money as a W-2 employee, it's going to be very hard. Now, another option I would say for people, if they are going that route, is you need to understand that you might not have your perfect scenario right out the gate.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of our clients who are, as younger people, they had roommates. They bought a house that they could afford barely. They put sweat equity into fixing it up, and they had roommates. And then they did this because then they could cover the mortgage. They could use that house as a springboard to get into the next house. And so that's another thing I would look at if I was a young person who was really trying to buy a house. I'd also be saving. I'd find a way to make sure the money I was setting aside was at a minimum outpacing inflation by a couple percentage points. And so I'd look at some type of conservative investment account that was protected from catastrophic losses, outpacing inflation, and completely liquid, obviously. And there's strategies to do that. If you looking for something, that's something we help people with all the time. But any good financial advisor should be able to point you to something that does exactly that. Mm-hmm. And so that way your money is growing. And understand that, like, I think too, if you look at do you know the average age of home buyers? I think we've talked about this.
It's in their 30s.
That's right. Yeah, it's 36. Mm-hmm. All right. So as of 2025, the first time home buyer, the average age is 36 years old.
I think, well, going back to like what you said, not everything happens in your perfect timeline. I know for me, like looking back on my life, nothing happened in my perfect like timeline of what I thought I was going to be doing at this point. And honestly,
what did you think your perfect timeline looked like?
I don't think it was like my perfect timeline, but there were certain things that my parents did or my sister did. I mean, they had a house by now, which I get that's not normal, but growing up, that was very normal for me. They're all married, and like, it's just so interesting how you have this idea of what you think your life is going to be and what your timeline is. It doesn't have to be perfect, but how it doesn't happen. And same with, like, I have my cousin Megan, who she's a client of ours as well, and she...
What's up, Meg?
So she's a firefighter, and she's like, I never saw myself doing this. I always thought, like, I would also, like, be married or, like, have a house or anything like that. She's like, thank God. Honestly, genuinely thank God, because I had a very positive outlook on life, and I took every hit with kind of a grain of salt and just said everything works out for me, and it does. It just doesn't work out the way that you expect it to.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, before this, and I want to circle back to what you were just saying, because I really want to go into... I want to ask you where that expectation comes from. Like, why do you think it is, especially for young women? Because I think expectations are higher in some regards for young women. But like, even this right here, I was so excited to have Sam on today. I've been looking forward to it, and we're going to have him. He's one of my best friends. I respect him. He's younger than me, but I actually look up to him, and he's become one of the people I trust most in my life. And unfortunately, like you said, his wife, they had to go to the hospital this morning. She's just not feeling well. And so I see a text right as we're getting ready, and I'm like, oh man. And so I don't know if you remember, like beforehand, I was out loud. I do this stuff. I was like, everything works out for me. It's all going to work out. Everything is great. Everything in my life works out. And it's just like going back to that positive reinforcement of like, okay. And we did. We could have sat here and be like, oh, humdrum. We're not going to do anything. But like,
we genuinely say that all the time.
Everything works out. Everything works out. I jokingly say I feel like I'm God's favorite, because things just work out. And they don't always work out, but like in my mind.
But it works out in the very long run.
Yes.
If like even the things you're like, wow, that did not work out, in the very long run, you either learned something, you took away something from that, you made a new relationship in that, or you lost a relationship that you weren't supposed to have.
Mm-hmm. And that is so important, I think, because I feel like people conflate first world problems with real problems. Like, we have nothing in America but first world problems. All right. And I'm not trying to make this bad, but I would really I invite people to get some perspective. If you haven't traveled the world, or maybe you're not in a position to, the world is not America. My wife and I, we're getting ready to go to Mexico. All right. We're going next week, and I'm pumped for it. Well, I talked to the people there, and like the people who work at these resorts, not most, but like they work 7 days a week. They typically work for about 3 months straight, and then they get 1 week off, and that's their year. And they make maybe $700 per month to do that. A lot of them live an hour to an hour 20 minutes away from the resort. And if you talk to them about the places they are, like I've asked them, and then I go and like Google search it and do a Google Maps, they're living in like poverty, and conditions that we as Americans would be like, oh my gosh. And again, they're happy, they're doing their job. And I'm not like, I'm sure they have problems too, but like the perspective of like, in America, you're not starving to death. I know people talk about like, oh, food insecurity. I'm not taking away from that. I understand that there's times where people are like, oh, what? But like, if anything, in America, we have an obesity problem, so you're not going to starve to death. The poorest people in America have cell phones in their pockets, have TVs on their walls, are eating pretty decent, are not worried about dying, from exposure. That's the very rare exception in America. And you travel the world, and that's not it. There's if you go to if you go to the Philippines or like India, I'm gonna butcher this, but there's a meal. It's called like pad pag or something like that. I'm butchering it, but like there's places that are so poor that what happens is that these people go out and they dig in the trash and they get the meat and everything that people have thrown away, and they collect that, and then they go, they clean it, they rewash it, and they sell food the next day from the trash that they gathered the day before for pennies. And this is what a lot of people live off of. And so it's like, and we're here talking about how bad things are, how hard things are, and it's like, you live in America where you have PhD level experts in your pocket with Grok. You have unlimited resources. I always used to talk to people about like, hey, everyone can be rich in America because we have the library. Like, it's your guaranteed ticket. You can go learn anything. Even if you have no computer, no nothing, you could literally go to the library and learn everything you need to learn about whatever you want to be great in and make all the money you ever want to make. And so I wanted to go back because you said something like, oh, things didn't work out perfectly or the way I thought. Like, I think the expectations for young women is very different. There's expectations for young men, but like, where do you think that comes from? Because I think that especially we're seeing like, and I don't want to make it a weird thing, but you see so many women now are on some type of SSRI, and I'm not taking away from that. I'm not belittling it. I'm just curious as to like, there's clearly a happiness.
Okay, you have to cut this because I actually don't know what SSRI is.
Okay, so it's like medication for like depression or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So like, so I'll go back and we'll just say, so many people, like when I say an SSRI, that means they're like on like some type of mental wellness medication.
Yeah. Okay,
right?
go ahead.
So many women are on SSRIs, and they're just, you look at studies that just show that as a whole, young women are just not as happy. They're just not feeling fulfilled. Like, I don't know, I'm not a young woman. Like, what do you think that is? Why do you think that's the case?
I was actually talking about this with one of my girlfriends, and truly, I think there's societal, and I also think that there's pharmaceuticals, because a lot of women, they're on birth control, which messes with your hormones so much. So girls will get on birth control, and then the next thing they'll need is, because the birth control is making their mental health decline, then they'll need antidepressants or anxiety meds, which can cause like night sweats or lack of emotion, lack of drive, maybe exhaustion, tiredness, so they feel like they're not as ambitious. And then they'll get on something else for that, and it's this snowball effect, because you're putting a Band-Aid on something, and it's just causing issue. It bleeds out in other places. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that number one, our healthcare system has got to change on like a pharmaceutical level, because drugs are being pushed so hard. I don't think we have a starvation issue in America. I think we have a drug issue in America on all levels. And I think that when people see that, they see like homelessness or alcoholics or addicts or anything like that. But the drug level is so much higher than that, because almost every single girl I know is on some type of hormone altering medication. I'm on spironolactone, and so that's for, it doesn't have it. The side effects are very, very mild, but I know a lot of girls are on spironolactone. I don't know what that is. What is that? It's literally just for your skin, because I have hormonal acne. And I don't anymore because of spironolactone, but it messes with your hormones. And so that one, most girls are on that. Most girls are on antidepressants or birth control, and it's just like this snowball effect, because even with spironolactone, it can cause like fatigue or tiredness, or I don't know if it can drive your immune system down, but I've been sick a lot lately.
Stay away from me. I'm going to Mexico, right?
I know. But I don't know. I genuinely think that America has a drug problem and a food problem, because our food is not quality food. And so when we're talking about America like being one of the best places ever, I agree with you. I think that like get some perspective, but that's also like for anyone watching, that's not us taking away from the problems that America has. 100%. Like two things can be true at the same time. Yes. And so I would not choose to live anywhere else. However, like definitely there's so many things that we could do that would make America a lot better. The other side of that is societal pressure, and I grew up a certain type of way, and I know a lot of people didn't grow up that way, but I grew up very traditionally with traditional like gender roles and everything like that. I saw my older sister get married, and she honestly has a great life. She's a stay-at-home mom, and again, that's not to take away from that, because I think it's so hard to be a stay-at-home mom, especially with 3, 4, 5 kids. But that's what I wanted, because it seemed like really nice, and I wanted that husband, and I wanted all that kind of stuff. And my mom got married at like 20. I think my sister got married at 18, 19, 20, anywhere in there. And then my second older sister also got married at 18, 19, 20. So it was just like this repetitive idea of what successful for women looked like. But then actually with social media, you're having a lot of older women coming on and saying, don't get married without setting up your own retirement plan, your own finances, because they spend their whole lives being a stay-at-home mom, and it's great, But then what happens is if something happens and that marriage falls apart, well, they have a 20-year gap in their resume where they don't have experience, they don't have any way to continuously create money. And so, I feel like I'm seeing a lot of older women saying, like, don't get married.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, and that's the way the world has changed so much. I mean, I was just talking with a client who, unfortunately, her and her husband, and this one broke my heart because they're both such great people, but they are getting divorced after over 30 years of being married.
So
and it's, they have grown kids, grandkids, and just to watch that disruption. And again, in her conversation with me was exactly that, like, hey, I have to relearn this stuff because, her husband, I'm not, again, going to say names, but she's like, hey, he took care of this and now I'm having to learn this. And thankfully she does have a career and she's done all that. But I again go back to wherever you are at in life, you have to have something for you. And people might say, oh, you're being selfish. Like, you kind of have to be selfish a little bit. I'm not saying at the expense. Like, if anything, like, I am selfish with my time and with what I'm trying to do, but it's because I know what it's going to do for my family. Like, my wife and I, we get upset at each other, we argue, but at the end of the day, we look at each other as like, it's still Team Montez. This is Team Montez against the world. We don't care. We will burn the rest of the world down for Team Montez. We are loyal to this. And we understand we're going to fight. And me and you, we've talked about it. And I feel like this is a conversation I talk about a lot with people, is that, like, it is, if you, we were talking about this, I think, before our last podcast. I don't think we included it. But we was like, hey, if you took your best friend and said, hey, you're going to have to take this person. You're going to have to live with them. You're going to have to mix your finances. You're
we
going
did talk
to,
about this.
It didn't get included. I edited that out, all right? Because we were mentioning names, all right? But we said if you took your best friend, you had to tie your finances together. You had to live with them. You had to share the same bed with them. You had to share the same bathroom with them. You had to eat your meals together with them. You had to do all these different things, and take sex out of the picture. Like, just take, like, just a friend, and you have to do all these things. You have to choose, where you're going to travel. You're going to, all these different things, how you're going to raise your kids. You would look at that and be like, and if I said you have to either do that or you have to give up that best friend, I'd be like, pop smoke, I'm out of here. Me and Sam, we were talking about this the other day. I was like, he was like, we wouldn't even be friends anymore. He was like, we're done. And so,
I do say all the time, like, I can't live with anyone else because I don't want to ruin any relationships.
Yeah, and this is the thing that I think that a lot of people miss when it comes to, like, marriage or life in general, is that, like, especially younger people who are being married, with married stuff, and again, kind of going back to, like, the doom and gloom, that people feel as we're moving forward, is that, like, I think it's a lot of unrealistic expectations.
Well, and I also think that part of it is everyone's expecting one thing to, like, fulfill them, because you said the word fulfill, especially when it comes to women, and I think that for a lot of people, and not just women, not just men, but for girls, everyone ends up having, like, this part of themselves that they're like, I need to be doing something. And so a lot of times for women, it's like, oh, I don't really feel fulfilled, like, let me get married. It's like, oh, I don't really feel fulfilled, let me have kids. I don't feel fulfilled, let me actually get rid of this and have a job. For guys, it's the exact same thing. It's like, okay, and I think we're putting so much pressure on something that's never supposed to make you happy 100% of the time, to where it's like, even a career, it's not going to make you happy 100% of the time. A relationship is not going to make you happy 100% of the time. So, like, putting your eggs all in one basket, you're just putting so much pressure. And, like, imagine you being the sole responsibility of your wife's happiness. Like, 100% of the time. 100% of the time. It's not possible, and it's so much pressure to put on somebody else. Like, you can't put that pressure and expect them to be perfect all the time, because you're inevitably asking to be disappointed.
Exactly.
And so while, like, I had a long-term boyfriend for a long time, and I really cared about him, but there was that aspect of, that's the only thing I had in my life, because it was long distance. It was medium distance, so I would drive up there to see him. So I didn't really have a lot of friendships. because I was working during the week and then I'd go up there during the weekend. I didn't have a lot of friendships, so my relationships were suffering. I didn't really have like any sort of career path, and so that was also suffering. And so I felt like I needed fulfillment, and it wasn't coming from him, and that was making me frustrated. And then I let him go, and I started finding which thank God things worked out the way they did, because I've gained so much insight and I have so much more relationships, and I don't have that aspect right now, and that's completely fine. I think that will come in time, but I think it'll be also so much better because now I'm not putting so much pressure on just one individual. And I'm also so grateful for the relationships that I've made during that time. I'm also so grateful for the friendships, and that like also this happened because of it. So
Yeah.
like that's also really cool.
And now your DMs are gonna blow up because you just told the world you're single. So it's like.
But anyway.
Just had to throw that in there.
I go from that.
I was
Like,
just
wait, I don't know how
laughing.
I'm
I was like, oh, just subtly dropping in. By the way, fellas, I'm single.
I was just saying,
I know
like,
you were
even
trying
though
to do that. I was just
don't have
laughing.
that
Yeah.
aspect. Maybe cut that whole thing out.
I'm not cutting that. No
But-
way. That was great. That was. I mean, you're spot on. I mean, because again, it goes back to everything we're talking about. Is that like everything you couldn't orchestrate where you're at in life. Like, there's no way that you could orchestrate to get to exactly where you're at. And I think that people try to do that, and they have these expectations of like what it should look like. And again, and swinging this all back to just like with money and with savings and with your future. Well, my advice to people a lot of times is like, if you're worried about the future, good, you should be, because I've said this, and probably said it in other podcasts before, but at the end of the day, as the man in my household, as a husband and as a father, my job is to provide for and to protect my family. That is my job. No one else's job. Now, my wife does a phenomenal job and also helping provide. She's doing very well. But at the end of the day, if she said, I'm never working again, all right, that doesn't change my job. And then I also tell people too, is that like, and thankfully we do. We live in a great country where it's pretty easy to do that. But if America ceased to be America tomorrow, you know, if China dropped an EMP on us and we go back to 100 years in our technology capabilities, my job didn't change. My job is still to provide for and protect my family. And that's why I take it so serious. That's why, like, again, I work really hard right now because I want to, and I tell this to clients, is like, I save like it's going to last forever, but I plan like it's going to end tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people, when they're feeling that insecurity, they're looking for security from their money. And the money is not going to give you security, because money can come and money can go. And again, like, I don't think this will ever happen, but who knows what the future holds. Like, there's crazy players, and if you would have told me the world was going to look like what it does today 15 years ago, I'd be like, no way, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's got just exponentially like magnified with everything. And so I would just say to people is like, hey, if you're looking for fulfillment and you're looking to feel better about just your life and your money in general, one, like, start saving, obviously. Start putting some stuff away. Be consistent with that. It doesn't have to be a lot, but build an emergency fund. Like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, they did a study and they found that people who had the most financial wellness, regardless of what their income was, they all had $10,000 or more saved for an emergency fund. So start there. If you don't have anything, build up that emergency fund. But two, like, you're probably feeling nervous about your future if you have this anxiety, because like there's other things that aren't the best they can be. So get your health and get yourself in shape. Like, get your health in order. Go out, work out hard, do something difficult. Get out in the woods. Like, I'm reading a book right now that it said sports builds character, heartache. They say that sports builds character. They say that heartache builds character. Well, nature insists on character. So whatever you're doing, find time to go out and get in nature. Go hike. Do something for yourself. Get away from all the craziness and just like get some space there. And then learn. I mean, again, for me, this is weird. This is my own personal belief, so I don't know if anyone wants to use this, but like, I don't really fear. I'm not afraid. I'm very rarely fearful of anything, because I know that I can make money. I know that at the end of the day, like, I train very hard, whether that's through like jujitsu, I shoot a ton, I'm very active in my health. Like, at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? I'm doing what I can do. And that doesn't mean I'm invincible. That doesn't mean I can't die. That doesn't mean that someone couldn't come and take what I have. And like, no, but I don't have that fear or that doubt. And I'm also working on my thinking. Like, I'm very much working on self-development. So I understand that bad things can still happen to me, but I'm doing what I can do right now to minimize that chance or that likelihood, and also very aware that at the end of the day, we all die, and life is very short. And so I'm doing what I can do to like provide and protect and do all these things, but I can't control everything. So, but I don't have fear, because I don't feel like I don't know, like, I've seen videos online and where people who are just extremely out of shape. I saw this one thing where this lady was extremely out of shape, and she had her baby with her stroller, and the stroller started rolling down the hill, and she couldn't run and chase it down. And like, thankfully someone else was there and was able to.
She like kept tripping, wasn't it?
Yes. And so like, again, I just go back to like, imagine that's where, and again, I'm not taking away from people. If you're watching this and you're like, oh, he's fat shaming, I'm not. I'm just telling you that like, hey, your kids are counting on you. there's people who are counting on you to be great, and you're setting an example. And if that's the example you're setting, then it's not, no wonder you feel afraid. No wonder you feel like, oh, things aren't working out. Like, well, what are you doing? You're striving for the minimum. You're not even doing and then again, I would go back, and this might be hard, and I'm sure people won't like this. All right, that's fine. But like, if you're not even prioritizing your own health, how do you think you're going to do well in everything else in these other areas, like making money, or like you're not even prioritizing your health? The people who are counting on you are going to have less of you, because if you're not taking care of your health, it's going to catch up with you. And so like, again, I want to live a long, healthy life and be there for the people that are counting on me. And I'm not saying this to like shame anyone. God bless America. You live however you want to live. But I think that a lot of the issues that people have are like, well, why isn't this working for me? How can I do this? I just kind of come back as like, well, let's look at your actions. What are your daily habits? Are you doing the things that are actually going to move you closer to this? Are you studying? Are you working out? Are you becoming more attractive as a human being? Are you trying to be the best version? Like, why would someone want to work with you over the next guy? And so that's what I would say. If I was a young person and I was starting over right now, I wish to God I could. Like, I would never give up what I had. But if someone said, Robert, you're going back to being even a 16-year-old man or an 18-year-old young man, I would be like, with what I know today, even if I didn't know it today, but just if someone said, and you have AI, and I have a little bit of motivation, oh my gosh, I could take over the world. Like, I just don't understand. Like, there's so much opportunity right now. And so I think that's like, for younger people who are trying to figure that out, the real answer is like, yeah, there's things you could do to budget better, to get your credit doing well. You can do all those things. But realistically, it's like, what does your work schedule look like? How much are you putting in? What are you doing to separate yourself from everyone else? And what's your long-term plan? And like, especially for young men, because we're talking a little bit about the expectations from women. And I think those are hard. Like, I would think it'd be so, like, my daughter's 16, and I just look at the stress that she puts on herself and that her friends put on themselves, and they're all kind of mean girls to each other, and they're all just like, it just is. Like, girls are just, it's like psyops on each other.
Like, okay, random, but I was talking about it with my girlfriends because we took a trip to Bozeman, and girls get the double-edged sword because we feel everything so deeply, and we tell our girlfriends everything, which means that when something does go downhill, that's also just as deep.
Yeah.
But like, I wouldn't trade that for having a relationship with a man, because we were saying like, if you came home and you're like, oh, you know, Sam got a divorce, and Katie was like, oh my gosh, why? I don't know, I didn't ask.
You know, it just didn't work out. That was like, you
Sorry
talked
for,
about.
Name dropping, but I'm like,
well, Sam didn't get divorced. He's doing okay. All right.
I'm just like,
just a random name.
Friend,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But got like, they're just like, I don't know, like, I didn't ask, and it's like, oh, you like. Are they going through a hard time? I don't know. I didn't ask.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, girls, we would know the time, the date, the details, with who, when. You know, we would have receipts.
Yeah.
And so it's like...
Video footage.
Literally, we have, like, our relationships are so deep with each other, which I think could be so amazing. And that's why I appreciate my girlfriend so much, because I've been on the other side of that, where... you get hurt really deeply, or girls are mean, or they use certain things against you, you know? And so I think, like, it's such a double-edged sword.
Well, you talked about on our last podcast, I forget the name of the book, but something about, like, girls are spaghetti, guys are waffles or something. Yeah. And I remember, you know, going through with the editing, I was like, man, that's a great point, because that is what it is. Like, it's like guys are like, I'm in this box, I'm in this box, I'm in this box, and girls like intertwine. And so, yeah, the expectations for women is so, there's a lot. However, I think for young men, like, the expectations for young men, I don't think people talk about it. They're talking about it more. Yeah. And I'm happy for that. But men, you need to be men. Like, you need to be, again, I'm a traditionalist. I'm not the type of person who's like, oh, men have to do everything and women should be home cooking. No, not at all. I'm so glad we're past that. I am so glad to see my wife find joy from her job, because she does not want to be a stay-at-home mom. That's not something she wants. But she makes, and I've said it before, she makes our house a home. She is like the creamer to my coffee. She makes everything about my life better. And that, like, it's just like, she is so in tune with emotions. And again, sometimes it causes stuff because I miss it. But like, man, the effect it has on my son, just getting that aspect too from mom. But I think for young men, like, I think young men need to learn how to conquer. I think young men need to learn how to be assertive, how to be willing to make a decision. You might get the wrong choice. You might make the wrong choice, but you need to make that decision, because so often people are just looking for someone to say, this is what we're going to do. And that doesn't mean you have to have everything right, but it's like the saying, like, a shitty...
You don't have to be a dick about it either.
No, you don't have to be a dick. And it's like, you know, even just like a shitty plan executed immediately is better than like a perfect plan that you never get to, because you'll figure it out. You'll start like that. This podcast is a perfect example. Like, man, the first one I went back, I was watching, I was like, oh God, we suck at that. And even now, like there's things I'm learning, but it's like, okay, we're going to figure that out. And that's everything that you do. And so I would say for young men who are maybe going back to this question of like, what can I do to like get my finances in order? How can I, afford to buy a house one day? Again, I would go back to being like, it's not just the money, man. It's your life. It's what are you doing with yourself, and what are the hard things you've been doing? Like, find something extremely hard and go do that, and make yourself, like, force yourself to be put in positions where you have to build character. And that's why, again, I think you should be doing something like jiu-jitsu or like CrossFit or hiking hard or something very physical. There's a million different examples that put you in a position where it forces you to like have to think and respond to stress and respond to something tough. And again, I think jiu-jitsu is a great example of that. But like, you have to, like, even when it comes to shooting, people are like, oh, how can I get better at shooting? Well, you can do competitions, and people say, oh, why would I want to do competitions? It's like, they're not real life. It's like, yeah, no, but they force you to deal with stuff under stress. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing that people miss, is like, you have to artificially insert stress into your life here in America because there's like no stress. And so, but when you get used to doing that and you get used to like slowing things down, thinking through stuff, like, all right, I can respond to this, I'm going to do better. I think that would make a big difference for the trajectory of people's lives, and then that compounding effect over time and what it will look like for them.
I was watching another video on anxiety and stuff like that. So I was like, man, I'm having so much anxiety like the last couple days. I have no idea why. I really have no reasons why I should be feeling this way. So I was just kind of looking up some videos on it, and you talked a little bit about artificial stress. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them were, start doing harder things. You're not doing hard enough things, and that's why you have anxiety. And so I think that a lot of people want to make their life easier when they have anxiety and stuff like that. And so they reach for things that are like their phone for like that dopamine hit. Again, I think we have a drug problem because even our phones administer artificial dopamine all the time. And so you reach for your phone, you're scrolling because you have anxiety. That's just making it worse. Whereas if you would like go do something that you don't want to do, or like mentally start doing harder things, a lot of the anxiety and the depression, and I'm not gonna like, depression is a very real thing. I'm not trying to downplay that. Anxiety is a very real thing. And I actually think if you do need medication, like, it can be a good Band-Aid, but that's what it is, and that's what you guys have to like expect from that. Sometimes, I mean, obviously there are times, I mean, my dad's dad struggled with depression really, really bad, and he definitely needed medication. But, so I'm not downplaying that at all, but doing hard things is going to make like life a lot easier for a lot of different people.
Well, I think too, a lot of us forget that if you look at the history of mankind, it's only a relatively recent thing that we have this question about what is our purpose. For the majority of mankind's history, we were focused on one thing, and that was survive. Because men as a whole, mankind, we are very weak, soft, squishy creatures. Like, we do not do well by ourselves out and about in the wild. Like, you put a normal person out on the plains of Africa and they're by themselves in the dark with nothing, they die and they get eaten 100 out of 100 times. It's the collective ability of men to like band together, to build tools, to critically think that has brought us up from that. But that's still relatively recent, because even just within the past couple of 100 years, you were born into a caste system in most places of the world. And this is, and you just kind of stayed there. Like, if you were born a serf, you were going to die a serf, you were going to work your family's plot of land, you're going to do whatever your family did. And that's what you did. And now, in the very recent past, we have had this exponential growth of, that is no longer the issue. People aren't worried about starving. People aren't worried about dying, and because of the elements. And so all of a sudden, we've just been projected into this world where now the things that we used to have to worry about so much, and we had to dedicate so much of our mental facility to, are just done. Like, we don't have to worry about that anymore. And so now man has this inner thing of like, well, what is purpose? What is purpose even? What does that mean? And I think that is something that now, present day, this generation, more so than ever, is removed from all the inconveniences of life. Like, even when I was growing up, like when I left school, I didn't talk to my friends. If they wanted to call me, it was like like the jokes you see on Instagram. It was like, yeah, you had to call and had to talk to my mom. Hey, Leslie, can I talk to Robert? And then, oh, yeah. Hey, Robert, get off the phone. Or, hey, Robert, get off the internet. I need to use the phone. Like, it stopped. It would go home and then like, and people didn't know where you were. Like you didn't have a cell phone. People can get a hold of you all the time. And that also though went that because you didn't have that cell phone, you didn't have that instantaneous, like, I got the answer. Now I think that that's a great thing, but I think it's a great thing when you understand that like we are moving on to another chapter in, I think, the way that civilization looks at things, where it's like we've solved the survival problem and now we're looking at this purpose and this fulfillment problem, and going back to like saving, to money, to all that stuff. I think that people, when they're worried about that, it's because they don't know what their purpose is and they're trying to figure out how to fill that gap. And again, all this goes back to you have to find what is important to you. You have to find the things that matter to you in your life, and then you need to relentlessly pursue those things. Mm-hmm. And when you start doing that, like we've talked, and again, this is, I don't know, this might come off as like braggadocious. A bunch of people who watch this maybe don't know me. Like we've talked about self-talk. And one of the things that we've talked about in the past was like, when you were kind of giving me examples of like friends and just different things of like how you guys as young women, there are things where you're like, oh yeah, we don't always feel very confident about this, or like sometimes we worry about this, or and I'm like, sometimes it seems foreign to me because I've been relentlessly working on my self-development and I'm reading constantly. I'm becoming the best version of me. And like I've tried to dial things into my life to be as close to what I can control to them to be. And I'm very happy with the way it's going. So like, I'm just like, my self-talk is phenomenal. It's great. I think it's awesome, but it's also because I've realized like, all right, well, that's because I'm pursuing my purpose. And like, even with this, with our company, with Nexus, my goal is not to be like, oh, we're the biggest financial advisory firm, we make the most money. Like, I don't care about that. I want our experience for our clients to be like, man, that was top notch. One of our core values we talk about is remarkable interactions, meaning that people need to want to make a remark about it. They need to want to talk about it. And I think that that's something that's like, I have decided I'm going to treat this the same way I would treat being a professional, like if I were a professional MMA fighter, knowing that every time I stepped into this octagon, I could get my head knocked off. There's true consequences for failure. Then I know how I would treat my life if I was living that way. Or when I was in the Ranger Regiment, it's like, I need to, like, there's a lot of stupid stuff in the Army, but when we were training, I was like, having that mentality of this could be the last time I trained before we deploy, because there'd be times where we were essentially like world police. So you had to be ready to deploy, be in another country within 18 hours. So you couldn't leave the base more than an hour away, because at any point in time, if something kicked off, your company was the one that was on call. So just understanding that like, I have to treat this with like, this could be it. This could be the last little bit of training I get before I go out and like, I'm fighting for my life and fighting to protect the things that I love and care most about. And so I think if people start having that mentality of whatever it is that they're approaching in life, and that doesn't just happen, you can't fake it. You have to self-develop, you have to work, and it's consistent daily actions and daily habits over time. But over time, it's like that saying, you can, people overestimate what they can complete in 6 months, but drastically underestimate what they can complete in 2 years. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a lot of our world, is that like you see people who, they start things, that it's not going, they don't see immediate results and they quit. It's like the thing we talk about like with the gyms, like people join the gym in January, and then like 3 weeks go by and no one's in the gym anymore. It's because they didn't see those immediate results. But like, if you just right now, wherever you're at in life, you can reinvent yourself in in 2 to 5 years, you could reinvent your life and be in a completely different spot. And that might be what you have to do, because if you're in a job where you are not making a ton of money and there's not a lot of prospects and you're always going to be there with the current skill level you have, then probably the choice and the decision you need to make is you need to identify that. Say, you know what? The choices I've made have got me here, and this is not going to give me the life I want. And if that is the case, you need to start making immediate changes. So if I were anybody in the world and I was in that spot, I would say, okay, I'm going to find $30 a month and I'm going to invest in Grok. I'm going to get Super Grok. All right. You can use the free version, but like Super Grok, worth it, everything. And then I would just take an hour a day and I would start focusing on my big project and my direction of life and how I was going to make that happen and how I was going to use that to start making money and how I was going to leverage that over time to get to where I want to be. And then I would scale it and I would find ways to make it excellent. And I'd start looking at people who have already done something similar and understanding that you could read their books. And it's like the saying, standing on shoulders of giants. And you could just, you could skip so much of the heartache and just start with such a head start, but you have to still do the work. So
yeah.
That's what I would start with.
Yeah, I feel like those are all definitely really good things. When it comes to actively putting something together, what would you suggest for especially, younger couples, younger single people to start doing to start making sure that their financial picture is looking good?
Yeah, long term, I would say.
Or even short term. I feel like that's something that not a lot of people think about either.
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying, short term. Short term is very like, you've got to build an emergency fund. A lot of people want to skip this. A lot of people want to jump to like paying off debt. Again, giving credit where credit is due. I don't think he came up with this idea, but Dave Ramsey with his baby steps, where he talks about getting $1,000 saved. And it's funny because he's been saying $1,000 for years and years and years. But I've also understand why, because he's like, look, $1,000 it's not about the amount of money. It's not that much money right now, but it's just about the habit of like, I'm going to have some money. And so I think that, excuse me, I think that people, they need to start with saving up some cash. And when we build financial plans, this is always the first step. If we see that someone has no cash, the first thing we do is we focus on getting them $2,000 of cash set aside in an emergency fund. That way, if something bad happens, they're not going back into debt, because a lot of people want to skip this step and like, oh, I've got this high interest debt, I'm going to start paying it down. Well, you can do that. But the problem then is that as soon as something bad happens, which 100% it will, again, something is going to happen bad, you are now going right back into debt, and
People are just continuously treading water.
That's exactly right. You're getting right back into debt. You're using a credit card. You're now paying, 18+%. I know that, again, something in recent is that President Trump's administration is trying to get where for 1 year credit card interest is capped at 10%. Just so that people can get ahead, because so many people are drowning in credit card debt, and you're seeing interest rates getting up to the 30% again on credit cards. It's predatory. So I would say start there, have that emergency fund, and then focus. You want to focus on building what's known as your reduced essential expenses. Your reduced essential expenses account is going to be your true emergency fund. Now, there's a formula to do it. It's something that we calculate when we're doing this with financial plans. But if you don't know where to start, the real thing is you don't necessarily need like 6 months worth of savings. People talk about that. That's like, it can make it feel overwhelming, because like, who's going to save 6 months? That's a lot of money. All right. To like have as an initial goal. Your reduced essential expenses is going to be, hey, you need to figure out how much money you take home, and you probably need to have about 65% of that saved for at least 3 months. Okay. And why that is because you think if something bad happened, for most people, other than a death in a family, which is a whole different issue, and there's life insurance and all that stuff you need to have there, if people are counting on your income. But let's say for most people, the worst thing that will happen is they lose their job. Now it's like, oh, I got to find a new job. So the first thing I would be thinking about was, how hard would it be for me to replace my income with a similar style job if I couldn't work here anymore? Okay. If it's really hard, then you need to have more money saved in 3 months. But if it's something that's like, oh, I could probably find another job at XYZ company similar. Okay. It gives yourself a little bit of time. And then if you lost your job, you wouldn't be eating out as much. You wouldn't be spending as much money. You would cancel all your trips. You wouldn't be putting money into your 401k or IRAs. You'd be cutting back. So you really only need maybe like 60 to 65% of your take home pay for a couple of months just to keep yourself afloat. All right. So I would really focus on that. From there, I would put together a debt elimination plan. There's great tools that can do this for people. You can use, there's a site called Undebt, so undebt.it, so undebt.it. This is one of the best tools. There's a free version, and even if you get the paid version, it's like $8 for the year. It's a phenomenal tool that will help you put together a debt elimination plan and figure out exactly what you can do to get out of debt as quickly as possible and save the most money in interest. And then with your retirement accounts, if you have a 401k, you have a simple IRA, something like that where you work, you want to make sure you're at least getting the match. Okay, so the most common formula for 401ks as far as a match is going to be a safe harbor plan, where if you put in 6% of your income, your company will match you 3.5%. These are not all 401ks plans, but this is the most common 401k design that you see when it comes to an employee match. So what that equates to, if you think about this, if you put in 6% of your income and you immediately got 3.5% matched by your company, that equates to a 58% rate of return before your money is grown by a single dime. So just to put your money in, you get a 58% rate of return. And this is huge. I mean, if you look at 2025, the end of 2025, looking backwards, Morningstar just released a report where they showed that the average investor in a trailing 10-year period of time from December 31st, 2025, averaged a 7% rate of return. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 in that same period of time average, I think it was like 13.1%. It's a huge difference. And so why I say all that is that even if you are getting like great rates of return, the market as a whole is maybe getting on average 10%. So like to get a 58% rate of return right out the gate is insane.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's free money.
Yeah, it's free money and no one can beat that. So you want to get that. Now within your 401k, if you don't know where to start, I would very, very much suggest connecting with a financial advisor. There's lots of studies, so helping define contributions. They looked at over 700,000 401k participants, and they found that the participants who worked with an advisor, they ended up accumulating about 79% more wealth, those who got help, than those who did not over a 20-year period of time. So it's huge money, okay? So I would say work with a great advisor because they will make you money. There's study after study that shows this. But if you don't have an advisor or you don't know where to start, probably the easiest place to start is something like a target date fund in a 401k, because a target date fund is going to follow what's known as a glide path. It starts very aggressive when you're young, and it systematically adjusts the holdings as you get older to make sure that you have the appropriate allocation of stocks, bonds, and the right types of stocks and bonds. And it's something that people can follow where it's a pre-diversified fund for you. There's actively managed ones and there's passively managed ones. I would say I like the actively managed ones a little bit more. I just think that there's value in that. But either ones work, and it just kind of is a set it and forget it thing where if you do nothing else, you know nothing else, and you work at this one company and you only use this one fund, it's not going to be perfect, but it's at least going to get you in the ballpark of where you should be, and more than likely it's going to help you accomplish the goals that you're after. So I would focus on that. And then last but not least is that as you're going through all this stuff, you want to make sure that your foundational stuff is squared away. So a lot of times people are so focused on looking long term, they forget about the immediate things. So I kind of alluded to it, but if you're married, you've got kids, you've got people depending on your income, you need to have life insurance, you know, because the fastest way for your financial plan to fail, you could have the best debt elimination plan, the best savings plan, the best investment plan, the best everything. But if a spouse dies and you go from 2 incomes down to 1, that's catastrophic. And it's the bills don't change. And even if you're like, oh, well, only I work, my wife doesn't work. Well, what you're forgetting is that it's not just you who lost a spouse, but if you have kids, it's kids who lost a mom. I've paid multiple death claims, and it is hard. I've paid claims on husbands, on wives, and I've paid 2 claims on children. Like, it sucks.
Yeah.
And so you need to have insurance on both members, because even if you're a husband, there's so much that your wife is doing around the house, or if you're a wife and your husband's staying home, either way, whatever it is, there's so much they're doing that you don't realize, and that you don't want to have to go right back to work. You want to be able to take time, spend with your kids, dial back a little bit. But you can't do that if you have to worry about paying the bills.
Well, one thing you said earlier that is so huge when it comes to life insurance is your job as a mother or a father doesn't stop when you die. And so you want to make sure that they're still taken care of regardless of where you end up.
Oh yeah, I remember, you know, and that was one thing that I remember learning when I first started doing this, is talking to people, because, you know, when we're talking to people have concerns, they have objections, whatever you want to say. I think it's just people are trying to get all the facts, you know, and so I don't look at it as like sales objections. I look at it as like people still have questions. But that's one of the things that I'll ask people is that, like, okay, so people are like, oh, you know, and this is I almost never get objections anymore, but when it does happen, you know, earlier in my career, I would have people like, oh, I don't know if I need life insurance. I don't want to get it. And so the question I would ask is like, hey, you know, John, you know, just whatever, if you could get life insurance for free, would you get it? And
yeah.
Of course, the answer is yes. It's like, so it's not that you don't believe in life insurance, it's the cost, right? Yeah, well, you know, what do you spend on your auto insurance? What do you spend on your homeowner's insurance? You know, I spend, you know, $200 on my auto insurance. And what does that really cover? Some metal, some fiberglass, you know, to replace a vehicle if you hit somebody. It's replaceable. But your income, it's completely irreplaceable. So if something happens, and if you're doing this right, again, if you're looking at insurance for the average Main Street middle American person, the right answer is term insurance. If someone is telling you anything else but term insurance, they are lying to you. They're trying to make money off of you, all right? And they can say, oh, this, that, like, please, I will go up against anybody on anything when it comes to like permanent style life insurance versus buying term and invest the difference. There's only a very small percentage of people that permanent style life insurance makes sense for, and it's ultra high net worth people who need it for tax planning purposes. But term insurance is extremely affordable. You can, like, my wife and I have, you know, like $2.8 million of coverage on me. We have $600,000 on her. We have $15,000 on both my kids. And I think we spend maybe $130 a month. And so it's like $130 a month to make sure that if I die today, my family's lifestyle doesn't change. They don't have to move. They don't have to get a new house. They don't have to change school districts. They don't have to worry about how they're paying the bills. No, it's just like, yeah, it sucks. It would be sad if I died, but it's not financially devastating. And I think that a lot of people forget about those things. So I would say that foundational planning is also extremely important. And last but not least, like, you've got to be focused on your estate planning documents. And no one wants to talk about this. And people think, oh, I have nothing. It's like, no, you need your power of attorneys. You need your living will. You need to have a will, especially if you have kids. Like, your will is the document that stipulates what happens to your children if both you and your spouse die. And it doesn't have to be an expensive thing. Like, there's something that is, it's something that you don't have to spend a lot of money on. And if you were like, if I were in a spot where I was like, I truly don't have the money it takes to get my estate planning documents done, what I would do is I would look at my state and I would see if they allow what are known as holographic wills. A holographic will is where you can just in your own hand write out what your wishes are. Like in the state of Montana, it's completely accepted as a legal will. You don't even have to have it notarized. You just have to write it in your own hand and sign it. Again, not an attorney, check with your attorney, but this is how it works. I'm not giving legal advice, but I would look at these types of things. And just because you don't necessarily have the money for a lot of this stuff doesn't mean that you have to ignore it completely. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is there's never been more access to information in the history of man. So like, ask whatever AI you want to use, how could I do this? How could I get an estate planning? How could I get estate planning documents if I don't have a lot of money? And it will show you how to do that type of stuff. So I think those are things that people, they don't look into, and it's pretty easy to get a lot of that stuff done, you know?
Feel free to reach out too.
Yeah. To Josie. You can talk to Josie. Yeah, one of us. I like it. She's out there. You can reach out to me and Josie. Make sure you request Josie.
I was like, do I put this in here?
Yeah,
No.
just little
Like,
shameless plug. Yeah, no, it's no. Again, we're happy to help people with that stuff. And again, my goal. I know that this podcast is going to have people reach out to us. I know. I'm not an idiot. I know just how the way that life works and the way that I focus on the projects I do. Like how you do anything is how you do everything. I know that people are going to reach out, but I'm not worried about that. I don't care. Like if no one ever did, I would still do this because I think that there are bigger reasons why I do videos. Like I think about it sometimes. I think about dying a lot, and it's just very real to me. Like I've had a lot of my friends who have been killed in the military. I've seen a lot of that, and that's what's funny is like I'm not saying like, oh, look at me, I was such a badass. Like in the world of the Ranger Regiment, I did nothing compared to so many of my friends and so many people I know, and like. But I was still around that a lot. And, but I do these videos a lot too, because I want something, again, going back, we were talking about Charlie Kirk earlier. And I like Charlie Kirk. I watched a lot of his content, and, you know, I really respected what he was saying, and it broke my heart what happened to him. The one thing like that I'm very grateful for his family and his children is that they have hundreds of hours of video content where they might not get a chance to really know their dad intimately the way they would if he was there. But the opportunity to watch what he said, to listen to him talk, to hear his ideas, I think that's invaluable. So again, if no one ever did anything with us, like that's one of my I never talk about this, but like that's a big goal for me. That's one of the reasons I do as much as I do with the videos I do, because it's not perfect. But I always want something that, especially for, you know, my son, he's only 7, or like even grandkids, like, hey, maybe I die early, and they're like, what was my grandpa like? How did we get here? What did Grandpa Rob do? Yeah. And to be like, well, you know, he was great. You should go check this out. He was talking, and like to have long form conversations where they could sit in and they could hear this, and they can kind of see the type of people we are and the way we wanted to live our lives. I think that's invaluable. And so, yeah, you can reach out if you want, but if you don't, it's cool. Just enjoy the content, but we could definitely help, you know. But that's another big goal for me. Like, I don't know. Like, I think about this stuff a lot because, like, life is so short, but that's what makes it so special. And it's like one of my favorite, if not my favorite quote, is a Confucius quote. Every man lives 2 lives. The second begins the moment you realize you only have 1 to live. And people miss that. And I think we all treat like we have forever and we have all this time. But the average lifespan of a human person is like 4,000 weeks. It's not a lot of time. And I'm 40 years old almost. I'll be 40 in just a few months. By all intents and purposes, I'm middle-aged. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm trying to live a long, healthy life. But man, just like that, you know, I've been a first responder to 2 fatal accidents just as I'm going about. You know, you see this, and both young people. I've paid multiple death claims. I've seen friends of mine who were young in their early 20s get killed. Just in the military, it's just so short, and I don't want people to take that for granted. So I think these conversations are good to have, you know, and that's kind of like going back to what we've talked about, is like giving people the opportunity to be a fly on the wall and just hear some of this stuff. Like, I think it's very, very valuable. So
I agree.
Yeah. Why are you doing this, Josie? What are you here for? What's the podcast for you? Like,
I don't know.
Let's go.
You just gave me the idea. Yeah. You're like, hey, you want to do this? It's like, whatever I need to do to help.
Well, I'm just curious too, because like I'm very proud of what you're doing. I've seen how hard you've worked over this past year, and we talk a lot, obviously. But like, I don't know, like what do you what do you think like the end state for you? Like, what does it all come to? What does it look like if this works out perfectly? How do you see that for yourself?
You know, I touched on it a little bit, but I mean, fulfillment is a big one. I don't know. It just is really depressing if I think about doing something that I don't care about and I don't have any say in how it's built. Right now, I mean, I do have another job, and right now it's so frustrating that I have no say in some of the major decisions that are being made, and it's affecting my life directly. And like I might not be working there in, you know, a couple weeks or whatever, however long it takes, and I understand that. And at the end of the day, it's okay. It is what it is. But I think it's so frustrating when you have ideas or you have things that you want to build upon and somebody can just say no. You know, that's really, really frustrating. So I think that fulfillment aspect of it is huge, because I can build something that's mine and forever will be mine. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I don't know if I'm going to have kids. I don't know if all these things are going to happen, but I do know what I can do today, and I can build a really good, I talk about future me all the time, and I'm building like a really good foundation for whatever happens there. And at the end of the day, like I always try and take every opportunity if I feel like it's going to grow me as a person, if I feel like it's going to grow me in my career and every other aspect. And I do think that this is one of the best industries to be in, especially with you specifically, or with Nexus specifically, because of all the things that it's doing. I think that if I was working in just kind of a main street financial company, I don't think I would feel the same, just because they're not doing a lot of the different things that we are doing with the podcast. And it's like every day you come to work, it's like, how can we be better? And yeah, I feel like even as new as I am, I do feel like if I have something that I think is a good idea, you do take it. And then we are able to discuss that and really build upon that. And so I think it's really exciting to be part of something that you can just truly build. I think that it's so cool, and I don't think that a lot of people get this opportunity, and I genuinely do think it has grown me a lot as a person. And there's a lot of stuff that I do in my day-to-day life that now I can apply this, because even before we met, I told you that I've been reading a lot of books, and I think that's part of the reason you hired me, is because you're like, oh, she actually, knows a lot of this stuff. So I already have been doing that prior, and now I actually have somewhere where I can put all of that information.
What are some of the things that you feel like, since you've been with Nexus, like, what are some of the life lessons I don't know if life lessons is the right way, but like, what are some of the things that you're taking away that you're like, you know what, this has been helpful, or this is something that don't know if I necessarily would have learned here or somewhere else, or like just things that are moving your life in the right direction? Is there anything where you're like, man, I'm really grateful for this, or this has been a change for me? Anything that comes to mind at all?
I mean, I know there is. That's the thing, is I'm just trying to figure out how to put it into words, because I know that there's so many different things. A lot of the books that we read and we're able to talk about, because it's so hard, because have you heard the quote, knowledge isn't power applied, knowledge is power? That's exactly what's happening. Is because you can go out and you can read every book in the world, but if you don't apply anything, then it's just kind of pointless. And so it's so cool to see things being applied. And I do know, and I think that's a big reason why I'm doing the podcast too, is because I do know the way that you talk about other people, and you know the way that you want to help other people when it comes to business, and how I told you I thought it would be so cool if people could just hear some of the conversations that we had, and even especially with Grayson as well. And I don't know, what was the question?
I mean, you're hitting it right there. I mean, and it's funny you bring that up.
Things I take away.
Yeah.
Oh, a big one is systems. I'm so bad with systems, and it's I think that's my goal for 2026, is how can I make my life more systematic, because 5 years is going to go by whether I do anything or whether I don't do anything. And I don't want that to happen. I don't want to be 40 and not have done anything, or not have any sort of legacy, or say I wish I would have done this, or I know that I had the potential to do this and I didn't take that opportunity. And so systems, I think that doing something that's hard, and this is hard, not necessarily because I haven't really gotten into the hard stuff yet, but doing something that's mentally challenging because I think with a lot of 9-to-5s, they're not super mentally challenging, and they're frustrating because you're not able to have a say in a lot of the things that you do, and you have someone telling you when to come and when to leave, but they're not really mentally challenging. And so I'm excited to be doing something that's mentally challenging.
Yeah, I mean, you said so many things that I think you're spot on. Like, yeah, the quote you said, I remember the first time that I saw that quote was in Think and Grow Rich, where it says knowledge is not power, knowledge is potential power. And man, that is so true. And you're right. Like, I have, again, and I'm not taking away from anyone, because everyone has a different way they want to live their life. However, you know, we work with a lot of people and they have traditional 9-to-5 jobs, and I hear clients come in and they hate them. They don't like their job, but they're doing it, and they make, you know, a decent amount of money, but like, they're not really making any real money. Like, I'm not trying to take away. And I think that people sell themselves so short. And that's one of those things where, like, for me in this career field, I realized by talking to hundreds and hundreds of people that most of them, all they want to do is have a guaranteed $6,000 to $8,000 of money coming in per month. That's all they want. And they're willing to work 35 years to build that. And it kind of goes back to Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, or Cash Flow Quadrant, where he talks about this, is that, you know, he talks about the 4 different quadrants of being an employee, being self-employed, being a business owner, being an investor. Okay, and he says that the majority of people being in the employee quadrant,
and even the small business owner quadrant.
Yeah, they're trading time for money, and then the way that they get to the investor is years. It's a lifetime, basically. It's a third of your life. If you're lucky, it's closer to like half of your life almost. 40%, I'd say. You spend 35 years, if you do everything right, saving money. Then you become an investor, and then you have mailbox money where it's invested. You get your income off your dividends, blah, blah, blah. And the overwhelming majority of people, and maybe if someone's watching this right now, I would ask them to think, like, what would be, like, what's the amount of money per month that you're like, if I had that, I'd be happy per month. Now, I'm not saying your goals, your dreams, oh, I want $100,000 a month, I want $1 million. No. Like, realistically, like, if you could just, someone said, here's guaranteed X amount of money with cost of living adjustments, it will always be worth this much forever. What is that dollar amount? And for most people, I would bet they would say like $5,000 to $8,000 a month, guaranteed. If someone gave it to them, it's like, you can't make more than this. Willing to work for 35 years to do that. And they're willing to do something that they probably don't even really love. And, you know, maybe if they find something they love, that's great. But like, I would challenge people to really think about, like, what is that dollar amount? And then how long do you want to take to get there? And that is why I was so excited about this industry at first, because I saw this as a way where I could do in maybe, 5 years what most people, it took them 35 years to do. Because in our industry, you can go out there and you can work hard and you can put some assets under management, and in a very short period of time, you can build up $5,000 to $8,000 of pretty residual income. You still have to take care of your clients, still have to meet with people. You're probably going to work like 10 to 15 hours a week if you just wanted to maintain. But that to me was like, oh my gosh, I could do that in a fraction of the time, and then everything from there is just icing on the cake. And then I also realized, man, I could build this up. And if I have a system and I have something where Robert is not the main feature, where anybody could come in and do this, I could sell this. And if I keep it very simple, and this is why I never understand with financial advisors where they want to be the guy, how do you sell that? You can't sell that. If you're the guy, you're doing all the research, you're doing all that, like, that's impossible to sell. So that's why one of the reasons, like, I like partnering with our strategic partner, SEI Private Trust Company, because then we have this team of professionals that they're doing all the investing stuff for us on an ongoing basis, so that, like, when I am ready to check out and I want to sell this business, I can sell it to someone, and it's a repeatable process that they can follow, and then it doesn't need Robert to work. And so I think for younger people too, kind of going full swing back to what should they be focusing on, is like, find an industry like that. And if you're looking, I think the financial advising world is so powerful. And what I would challenge people to is, like, if you are the right person, people will make room for you. Like, when you came to me, I was not looking to hire anybody. I wasn't. I was just like, oh no, it's a lot of work. I don't want to deal with all that, blah, blah, blah. And you were not the first person. We've talked about this before, where it's like, I kind of gave you things that I was like, oh, she's not going to do this. And then like little hurdles that you had to get through first before I'd even talk to you. And but you did all those things. And it kind of like forced my hand almost to the point where it's like, you know what, here's someone, like, it's so rare in the world today that's actually trying to do the things that we're talking about. these people are rare. So I'm gonna work with her for as long as she continues to prove that she is that type of person. And so what I would say to younger people as they're trying to figure out their finances and what they want to do moving forward is that I would encourage you to make yourself impossible to say no to. Like be such an easy win, such an obvious answer that people are like, you know what, we didn't have a spot for this guy or this gal, but we're going to make a spot. And I think when you start getting to that point where people can't really say no to you because you have done so much more work, you've put in all the effort, you are this incredible like version of yourself, and then you find someone you can partner with, that's great. Or maybe you just do it yourself. Maybe you're like, you know what, none of these guys are doing it the way I want to, and I want full control, and I want to do something big that no one can put their thumb on me. Man, that's another great thing to do there. Well, I feel like we covered a lot of good stuff there. Man, I hope that this gets into the hands of a lot of younger people, because again, I just think there's so much opportunity. But why don't we wrap up there? Let's just go through and how people can connect. I'll go first, then you can let people know how to catch up with you. But if you would like to reach out, you have questions, there's anything you want to hear more about, feel free to leave a comment wherever you're listening to this. Definitely subscribe and share this with people. Just help us get that out there. If you want to get a hold of us, you can start by just visiting our website, which is www.nexuswealthmanagement.org. You can send me an email directly. My email is very simple, robert@nexuswealthmanagement.org. Everything you have there, if you go to our website, you'll be able to schedule any type of consult if you need to get a phone call with me. Very easy to do that, and that's the easiest way to do it. Josie, go ahead, let them know how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, if any questions, anything, if you want to set up a meeting, please email me. So mine is josie@nexuswealthmanagement.org as well.
Perfect. Well, hey guys, until we come back, thank you so much for watching. We do appreciate it, and looking forward to the next time. It's good to do this, and talk to you then. Take care.